to want to know what was going on in the White House and the administration. If there were discussions about how to overturn the election or retain power by any means, obviously that's going to be pertinent to our inquiry. Nothing would surprise me at this point. The idea that the president may have been willing to use troops to try to put down protests or overturn the results, we really can't say that anything is beyond contemplation of that former president.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Johnson in for Nicole Wallace. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Nothing would surprise me at this point, says Congressman Adam Schiff, one of the members of the 1-6 House Select Committee. And most of us who've covered the past 5 years in Washington would agree. Even as we learn more about what Schiff referenced there, Trump's handling of the Black Lives Matter protests last summer. In a brand new Vanity Fair piece by Washington Post reporters Phil Rucker and Carol Lennick, they reveal that the former guy's one regret, quote, over the years, Trump has rarely expressed misgivings, but he regrets his response to protests last summer in Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, and other cities. I think if I had to do it again, I would have brought in the military immediately, the former president said. That comment, one of many shocking but really not surprising details of the Trump presidency, revealed in a 2.5-hour interview Lennick and Rucker had with the former president in March for their new book, I Alone Can Fix It. Their interview reveals that while Trump regretted not unleashing the military on protesters fighting for black rights and justice, he seems to have no qualms about the insurrection he himself incited that left 5 people dead and democracy on the brink of collapse. I would venture to say that I think it was the largest crowd I'd ever spoken to before, Trump said. It was a loving crowd, too. By the way, there was a lot of love. I don't see what love's got to do with it. Pressed again, Trump said he had hoped his supporters would show up outside the Capitol, but not enter the building. In all fairness, the Capitol Police were ushering people in, Trump said. The Capitol Police were very friendly. They were hugging and kissing. You don't see that. There's plenty of tape on that. But our friend, NBC News Washington Scott McFarlane, who will join me later this hour, who has closely tracked every charge against the insurrectionists and every piece of evidence presented, writes, I've watched the tapes. I haven't seen a hug or a kiss yet. But what's almost as frightening as that fateful day, if not more so, is that the disinformation that spurred the attack in the first place is still being spewed aggressively by the former guy, along with attacks of anyone who doesn't blindly follow him. Just now, they're coming from his perch in Mar-a-Lago. Rucker and Lennick add, quote, Trump was fixated on his loss in 2020, returning to this wound repeatedly throughout the interview. The greatest fraud ever perpetuated in this country was this last election, Trump said. It was rigged and it was stolen. It was both. It was a combination, and Bill Barr didn't do anything about it. Had Mike Pence had the courage to send it back to the legislators, you would have had a different outcome, in my opinion, Trump says. The ongoing threat the former guy poses to our nation is where we start this hour. Joining us now is Eddie Glaude, chair of the Department of African American Studies at Princeton University and MSNBC contributor. Also with us, Dr. Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham University and politics editor at the Griot, and Annie Carney, New York Times White House correspondent and MSNBC contributor. So I'm going to start with this. And I think this is really important to say. There's a lot of people out there who are like, we spend too much time talking about Donald Trump. We spend too much time talking about Donald Trump. But I think it's important for the American public to understand that this man is still basically the leader of one of the 2 most important parties in this country, and he's still basically plotting his return. Eddie, when you hear these kinds of comments, when you hear the president say, oh, yeah, you know, I thought people were loving and it was just a good speech one way or another, does it remind you of how dangerous Trump is, or do you think it's just the examples of a guy randomly tilting at windmills now that his power is over?
I think it's a bit of both. It certainly, to my mind, Jason, very clearly shows that Trump has political ambitions. What those ambitions are, whether it means that he will run for office again, I'm not sure. But he still wants to be the kingmaker. What I think was really clear after reading the piece, excuse my voice, was that Donald Trump is silly. I mean, I say that in a way that I want it to be read as condescending. It is very clear that this man is not very bright. And the fact that people follow him, right, baffles me at times. And so part of what I've been trying to do is to figure out what is behind the Trump phenomena, what's driving it. He wants to be the kingmaker. He wants to be he is Don Quixote tilting at windmills. He is a carnival barker. But I I want to understand what is the source of his power. And I think once we get at that and answer that question honestly, maybe we can begin to have a serious conversation about what we're facing as a country, it seems to me, with all of these folks supporting him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. Annie, I take this to you because I don't think this can be asked enough. Donald Trump doesn't actually have a very good track record politically, right? He lost the popular vote in 2016. He lost the presidency in 2020. His party lost seats in 2018. The guy has a steady record of being a loser. Why in the heck are Republicans still so wedded to a guy who doesn't have a track record of success that would justify such loyalty?
Well, I think he has a grip on their supporters. And so far, we've seen different Republicans try and approach that in different ways, plotting their own futures. We've seen Republicans like Rick Scott of Florida go to Mar-a-Lago and present Trump with a made-up trophy to get him, to make sure he's on his side. It doesn't become a problem for him. We have Republicans like Ron DeSantis who appeal to the same base of supporters who basically are frozen until Trump decides what he's going to do. And then we have Republicans like Mitch McConnell who are trying to go about their business pretending that he doesn't exist anymore. And it's a question mark of whether they can really do that. The interesting thing about the rallies that he's still having isn't so much what he says from the stage, where there isn't really much new. We see in this interview with Phil Rucker and Carol Leonnig that he's obsessed with the election. He's repeating false statements. We have to be careful in how we cover them in these rallies going forward. But what is notable is the crowds. He's still attracting tens of thousands of people to come to see him. And that is a power. That is a power in numbers. And we will see, a real test of his ongoing political power will be these midterms and will be his endorsements, and see if his candidates win, or if his endorsement actually isn't what it's cracked up to be, and there is a future for Republicans without him. The midterms are going to be a big test of his ongoing clout.
Dr. Greer, speaking of crowds, I want to read this quote here. This is, again, Donald Trump is never, former president never regrets anything. He doesn't say he's sorry, unlike Barack Obama, unlike Joe Biden. But I want to read this quote here. It's from the Wall Street Journal, Michael Bender's new book. Frankly, we didn't win this war. We didn't win this election. That's how you're supposed to handle these people. Bender quotes the former president telling his top officials, crack their skulls. On another occasion, Trump reportedly called for the military to go in and beat the F out of them. And several times he told officials, just shoot them. Met with the resistance from the Attorney General Bill Barr and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley. He then apparently clarified, well, shoot them in the leg or maybe the foot. Be hard on them. Dr. Greer, I'm not shocked or concerned that former president was a racist, a white nationalist, and that he wanted to just slaughter black people on the street. What concerns me is that the attitudes and belief that he's expressed, we're still seeing them manifest themselves in police behavior. My question to you is, how does this new administration deal with that? How does this new administration deal with the fact that it only took one or two people in our federal government to say maybe slaughtering black people on the street isn't a good idea? How do we purge those people, or at least change the attitude of this government when it comes to people who are legitimately protesting?
Yeah, Jason, I think this tacks on to what Eddie was saying. It's like, not only is the president not that bright, he's not that well. And I think that his type of behavior and his worldview seeps into his party. And we have the sycophants that we've seen for 4 plus years. We also have these sort of spineless Republicans who refuse to stand up overtly and say that the former president has been wrong, and what he is saying and doing is not leadership by any stretch of the imagination. And he's causing much of the division that we've seen with vigilantes and police departments all across the country. I think it starts with Democrats calling on their Republican colleagues to stop saying quietly behind closed doors that they support some of the Democratic notions and they believe that the Democrats and Joe Biden are moving in a particular direction, to really put pressure on them to say it out loud, to say it to journalists and reporters. I think the larger issue is so many are afraid not just of their elections, but their primary elections more specifically, because we have seen Donald Trump, the first time ever, a president or former president, turn against his own party. And so no one is safe. The fact that Donald Trump will lie without any impunity He'll repeat a lie constantly. I think that that is also part of a problem where Republican leadership can't really get a hold on a message. I think that they're scared, and it's trickling down to local and state level politics, especially in police departments, especially in how we deal with vigilantes who are attacking Black people on a daily and consistent basis, and not just African Americans, but Asian Americans, members of our LGBTQ plus community, Jewish Americans. We've seen all of those numbers are spiking right now, and it is because of domestic terrorists who are following the lead of the former president.